This is the third segment of a three-part video that Maria and I have created to discuss and to illustrate the many phases that a drawing can go through, particularly if it's done in a painterly style, which is the point of this video. So then, if you have not seen the previous two videos, I would invite you to go back to my YouTube channel and look for part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is the beginning phase. Part 2 is the middle phase. And now I'm entering into the beginning of the end phase. So it's gone through a number of phases, if you will, or passes. At this point, I have brought out a finer piece of vine charcoal to begin to delineate yet again these forms, slowing down and getting more particular, even more granular about the nature of each leaf and their relationships of one to the other. Including the ribbing of the veins, which began to give a sense of mottled form and three-dimensionality. We're not going to speed this up so that you don't have to watch for the next 20 minutes while I develop this drawing. But do know that this is done very slow and very painstakingly. Even though it is sped up, it takes quite a long time. And now developing the tone as well, the light and the shadow. Also, it's done very slowly, very carefully, but this is sped up for your convenience of watching. I felt as though the spaces in between could be enlivened, and by deciding to pick up a piece of pastel in this particular color, I felt that by developing what we call the ground or the negative shapes, that first of all, it would delineate these forms much better. It got a little muddy, a little murky in between those spaces, as you can well see. So that's one aspect, is to kind of clean up those areas. But you'll also notice as I develop this further that it also creates a really great sense of spatial play as I push these edges with this pastel. And you'll see all of a sudden there's much more of a rich spatial play within the design. Now the leaves look like they're coming forward in space much more. And now I am really entering into the end of the end phase, if you will, because I'm going back yet again with charcoal pencil. Quite sharp. And in effect, making what I hope to believe are the last notations, the last lines and marks and hatching necessary to finally say what there is to be said about these leaves. The weight of the line is important. I don't want this to be hard-edged everywhere with big, bold lines. So I'm being very sensitive to the weight of the line. And furthermore, you'll see as I develop this, that certain leaves are going to have more contrast. They're going to come forward in space. And a few leaves are going to have much less contrast, like the leaf behind the one I'm drawing now. And that creates a really rich sense of spatial play. At this phase, by now, I really understand each leaf. I'm familiar with it, I'm intimate with it, I know it well, and to be quite honest, there are times when I don't even need to look at the subject. I can just simply draw the drawing as I want to feel it. So what am I saying here? That I can meet the drawing on its own terms now and develop it the way I want to see it. So there are times where I'm inventing. I'm pushing the leaf a little bit to the left or to the right to make it work, to create more interesting spaces. I am still looking at my subject, but I don't need to do it as often because I feel I really understand this subject now and can be inventive, which is actually the most fun part, when the drawing is telling me what to do and where to go and how to be. Because ultimately, it's not just about a representation of the subject. It's about my interpretation of the subject. And it needed to have all those phases for me to have that understanding and, frankly, confidence to make it my own. At this phase, I'm nearing the end and completion of this piece, but we're going to slow it down to real time here in just a moment to make a point. There's an area that isn't working for me. It's what I see, but I feel it's not working. So I come in here and eradicate the leaf that is behind the one in front of it because it's just an awkward transition. So I have to invent something here to make that work. So I have to eradicate that edge of that leaf and get rid of the one behind it completely. And now here I've decided I'm just going to reimagine this leaf in space and create just the stem behind it. So this is what happens when it comes to inventing. One has to look at the piece as it is and decide, is what I'm seeing, is it going to work as a drawing? And in this case, it wasn't. And artists understand this so very well, the need to change and to reinvent in order for the betterment of the piece itself. At this point, I truly feel there's nothing more for me to say. It is finished.